Thank you all so much for being here. This is my fourth alchemy talk and the third one on the Emerald Tablet. And as I said before, the thing I love so much about the Emerald Tablet is it's literally like yay big. Like it's a small, and I'll read the full Emerald Tablet for those who haven't heard it. What I love so much about it is that it's so densely packed. And also too, just, in the Rosicrucian tradition, we have the saying that I love about being a walking question mark. So the most you can do to get the deepest layers out of the Emerald Tablet is to always look at it with sort of the beginner's mind, like that fresh eyes, and sort of be a walking question mark. And we're going to talk about processes today of how to use it, but one of them is just reading it in a state of questioning and just allowing yourself to be receptive to say what parts jump out, what parts are unique. What's the part that maybe you dislike, or maybe what's the part that you love so much, and then you can kind of investigate that. Alright, so what I'd like to do is start by reading the Emerald Tablet, and this book is by Dennis Hawk. I highly recommend checking him out, checking his work out, checking this book out especially. As I said before, the work in the talks that I've done on the Emerald Tablet is my own thought, but I definitely have to credit Dennis with finding the 7 stages of alchemy in the Emerald Tablet, because that's totally him. Okay, so the Emerald Tablet. In truth, without deceit, certain and most variable, that which is below corresponds to that which is above, and that which is above corresponds to that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of the one thing. And just as all things have come from this one thing through the meditation of one mind, so do all created things originate from this one thing through transformation. Its father is the sun, its mother the moon. The wind carries it in its belly, its nurse is the earth. It is the origin of all, the consecration of the universe. Its inherent strength is perfected if it's turned into earth. Separate earth from fire, subtle from gross, gently and with great ingenuity. It rises from earth to heaven and descends again to earth, thereby combining itself with the powers of both the above and the below. Thus you will obtain the glory of the whole universe. All obscurity will be clear to you. This is the greatest force of all powers because it overcomes every subtle thing and penetrates every solid thing. In this way was the universe created. From this comes many wondrous applications, because this is the pattern. Therefore I am called thrice great Hermes, having the 3 parts of wisdom of the whole universe. Herein I have completely explained the operation of the sun. So there's some works where you read it and say, yep, I got it. And there's this, that even if you have a fixed point of view, or you have like, oh, I totally know, this means he's talking about this means he's talking about this. If you adopt that mindset, then I promise you get a small fraction of what this Emerald Tablet has in it to offer. Because every time you have certainty and you say, oh, he's talking about the operation of the sun really means this, and that's all it ever means to you, then you're missing, all of the things that being that walking question mark can give you. All right, so what we're going to start with, so last month, we had talked about the 7 stages of alchemical transformation and how they come out of the Emerald Tablet. So that was the body of it, and now this is the 6th part. And this is how the universe was created. From this come many wondrous applications, because this is the pattern. So, to this month, what I'm focusing on is applications. Because it says here, there's many wondrous applications. It's basically saying there's many of them. So if you ever say that...
Is that better?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's great, thank you. So if you ever say that there is just one application, or just one truth, or one point of view, or one correct thing from this, then you're going to miss everything else. So today what I have is, I have 9 applications. These are just a small handful of just what I personally have found useful, but it's always changing, it's always expanding. Okay, so number 1 is one mind, one thing dream process. So in it, you can see that there's the one thing, and then in the Emerald Tablet says that creation is the meditation of one mind impressing itself on one thing. So one thing can be understood to be the cosmic substance or whatever physicality, or sort of from Dr. Adler's amazing classes on the Kabbalah, how things come down and precipitate into manifestation. So you can see that there's a substance, there's sort of this fluid or this sort of stuff when it's coming into being. It isn't hard physical reality yet, it's coming into being. And what helps direct it is the meditation of one mind. In the Emerald Tablet, that's how it's put. So for anyone who doesn't know this person, it's Neville Goddard. He goes by the pen name Neville, and he's really great. He has books, The Power of Feeling is the Secret, Awakened Imagination, just many others. But there's one process, and he was really big on saying that you have a thing that you'd like to create, you think of it, but you also need to feel it. And one of the processes he was really big on is thinking and sort of getting in touch with this sort of cosmic substance, or this sort of these potentials, and using your imagination to impress upon it what form you prefer it to take. And one of my favorite little passages that he has from those books is talking about there's no fiction. That when you read something fiction, it gets into your awareness, and then you tend to see that outside of yourself as well. So, and just as all these things have come from the one mind through the meditation of one mind, so do all created things originate from this one thing through transformation. So one example he gives in his book, which I never ever had heard before, is there was a book published, in 1898, and it was about this unsinkable ship. And literally, it was called the ship. The book was called Futility. The boat was called the Titan, and basically it held 70,000 tons, 800 feet long, carried 300 passengers, far too few lifeboats, and it was packed with wealthy passengers, and it hit an iceberg in April at night and sank. This was a book written in 1898, The Titanic, 1912. It was 66,000 tons, 882 feet long, could carry about 300 passengers, far too few lifeboats, packed with wealthy passengers, hit an iceberg on April at night and sank. So Neville gives this, and I never knew this before, Neville gives this as an example. This was a popular novel. People would read and then go to sleep. And he was saying that there's the power in your dreams and in your sleeping state to create, either intentionally or unintentionally. And he was saying, literally, this is all the details of this basically manifested in a way that was, not, it was tragedy, of course. But he was just using this as an example. When you use this, don't underestimate this process of, as you're falling asleep, imagine and think and feel and slip into the reality that you'd like to create. And then as you, and Wayne Dyer also talks about this too, is as you get into your dream state, some of that will carry into your dreams. And you'll have all of that time where where your mind will, impress, its intentions and creations onto the one thing. Okay, so number 2. Application number 2 is creating with the Hermes axis. I just named that, I didn't know what else to call it. But, there's the levity and gravity. In alchemy, we talk about levity and gravity, and we talk about cause and effect. And I think I talked about this on the first one on the Emerald Tablet, the first talk, I believe. But basically, there's levity and gravity. So this is a vibrational range, and then cause and effect. And as I mentioned in the talk, cause really would be in the middle here, and effect is how it radiates outside you. So one of the things I found is that whenever I am in a higher vibrational state, if I'm excited, I'm inspired, and all these new things are happening, the synchronicities and coincidence and alignments of things, and the way I'll think of something and I'll see some evidence of it, it speeds up. So what I found myself is I've sort of started journaling to say, especially when I'm in those kind of higher states for a period of time, I'll think of something so unique, and like 4 hours later or 5 hours later, someone will say that exact words. That's never heard those words in that thing, but it's just showing me that yes, that it's the time delay, because the higher, the more subtle, the less time delay, and the slower, the more time delay. When you're thinking of something or you have something inside of you you'd like to create, in terms of how it comes into manifestation. And I just, like I mentioned in the one talk about making coffee and tea, if you have, lukewarm water sitting in the sun, you're making sun tea, it takes all day. When you have just off of boiling water, making tea, it's 3 minutes. So vibration is catalyst. The more you are aware of moving up into the levity and then the gravity, the more you raise your vibration, the more you're coming from a place of joy, love, enthusiasm, these higher vibrational states, the more it speeds up everything. It's a catalyst. Like I said, vibration is a catalyst. So what I would say is to look at this and just kind of journal to say, wow, I've been in a really amazing space, or I had the most amazing thing happen for a couple of days, and start to see the things that you have in your mind when you start seeing them, and actually track the time delay, because that's one way I've found to sort of see where your vibration is at. And the less time delay, the more synchronicity, the higher in general your vibration is. And of course that's Carl Jung. I just had to put that in there. Not like really journaling right there, I'm not reading a book, but I had to put it in. Okay, so the next one is as above, so below analogy process. So some of these titles are kind of wordy, but just kind of look past them and just kind of put the words in as best they could. So really what it is it's looking at the principle, it's isolating the principle as above, so below, as below, so above. So, people might hear that and say, okay, well, that's just an archaic sounding phrase. But really, in language, we have what are called analogies. I mean, why do we have the word analogies? Is that we have a handful of patterns, and their manifestation, they move into all of these different ways of creation and manifesting. So what you can do with this is actively look at as above, so below. And this is mentioned in one of the Hermetic principles, and it's gone into depth in the Kybalion. So look at what's something that you'd like to understand that you don't understand yet? So just think of something that you would like to understand, or that it feels a little foreign to you. And then if you could find some type of comparison, what analogies, comparisons could you make between this and something you already understand? So things like gardening. I mean, there's principles. If someone gardens and can grow things well, there's really a lot of principles in there that can help them in many other things. Say, for example, if someone is really great at cooking, there's lots of analogies about cooking and creation and timing and temperature and all of these things that can be used for other things. So you might want to even look to say, what am I best at? What am I most familiar with? What are the sort of the realms or domains that I work with the most? So if you do that, you can start to say as above, so below. So what are the principles of this thing that I don't understand, and what are the principles of the thing that I really have good facility with? Okay, so look at the principles behind what makes it work, and then basically, if you can come up with a handful of examples to see how many ways you can, how many comparisons you can have between things that you know and things that you don't know. Okay, so application number 4, shifting between levity and gravity. And of course there's the two masks, the tragedy and comedy. So, as we mentioned before, that axis, that levity and gravity, and then cause and effect, the more you raise your vibration and get more and more into that state of levity, the faster things happen as a catalyst. But what's really important to know is a lot of times people just allow circumstances to create their state. And they do the best they can to change their circumstances, and that's great. That's fine. But at the same time, with circumstances, it can be a little challenging because, maybe things might not line up for you in that day. But if you have some way of altering your state, getting to a place where there's more levity, then that will influence it. And also too, there's the example of the person who was in the one Bernie Siegel book that had a terminal disease, and then he just watched funny movies and said, well, I might as well just kind of go out with a laugh. And he actually cured his condition. It was like an inoperable condition, basically a death sentence. And just through raising his vibration, he wasn't a match to having the disease anymore. So what's important is what do you do to change your state? So in NLP, we talk about focus and physiology, that those are the two royal roads to the state. So when most people want to change how they feel, what do? They either will have a drink or have pills or some kind of drug or substance, or even a food. Even like change something, do something to change your blood sugar. So if you do that, the problem is that you're limited to you're really limited to what change that can happen, and also you're limited to the availability of that. So say, for example, if your blood sugar is low and you're depending on sugar to change how you feel, then you're at the effect of that, and you really can't cause that. Oh, I apologize. Would it be possible to turn the lights back on? I'm just thinking that I know that video quality, just because I'm recording it, and thank you for turning them off. I think that makes this clearer, but awesome, thank you. I just know that I was just thinking in the back of my head that I know that video gets kind of grainy when it's dark, and I'm just kind of thinking, well, that'd be great to see the monitor, but also too, it's hard to, if the video is grainy and I post it later, it'd be hard to see it. So thank you so much for turning that off and turning it back on. I think it was a great thought, but I'm just considering the video. So in your state, so there's physiology. So eating something, drinking something, maybe getting up and dancing, moving something, all that is physiology. And focus is really, what are you focusing on? So, you've all heard the thing of like count your blessings or focus on what you're grateful for. And when you do that, that creates a shift. That's focus. And what you eat or drink or do with your body is physiology. Another thing about physiology, and this is kind of a funny sort of NLP thing, is, this is like kind of a popular demonstration of physiology, is they'll have people say, okay, stand up straight, breathe really fully, look up, smile, do all, and get in this really, this physiology of someone who's really excited, and now while doing all that, feel depressed. It's actually kind of hard, because your body, your internal state feeds into how your body is, but also how your body feeds into your state. So it would be really useful to say, okay, that levity and gravity, what are strategies? How have I done it in the past? You might want to say, how do I do it already? Do I always reach for that cup of coffee? Do I always reach for that sugary thing? Do I reach for alcohol? Do I reach for whatever? When you need to change your state, what do you do? In your own personal experience, in your own personal history, what are your go-to things to help your state change? And how could you do them in another way? Could you do like the positive and negative breathing here, that's taught here? Could you do like the energy rebalancing? Are there energetic things? If you do things that are more breathing-based or energy-based, it's more subtle than like having a drink or having something to eat, because that's a little bit more gross. And because it's more subtle, the more subtle it is, the more it's always available to you. Things that are gross, you have to go buy the candy bar, or you have to go buy whatever it is. But the more subtle it is, the more it pervades everything, and the more access you have to it. So it's really important to be able to develop sort of strategies that you know that work for you, that are always like, you say, oh, whenever I feel low energy, I can do this, this, and this, and this. And you have that just there. So whenever you do feel that, you can just tap into that. So that's really, really important to say. And then after you do it, you might want to say, okay, how's my level of levity and gravity? Where am I at right now? And then do whatever breathing process, or the positive, negative breathing, the energy rebalancing, or whatever it is. And then you can say, okay, how did I feel the shift? Because when you really do it, and you can feel yourself shift, you can say, okay, I started it here, and then after a few minutes I was here. that's really important to know in terms of when you need to be able to shift your states, that you can do these things. Okay, and as I mentioned before on I think part one, the subtle and gross process. So as I mentioned before, I feel that witness consciousness is one of the things that's developed in meditation, many forms of meditation, like mindfulness meditation. But I also feel that there's like a witnessing that's happening when people watch TV or movies, and that just taking a step back as the observer is, I feel like when we're doing this, we're kind of scratching the itch that's more authentic, that's more of a subtle sort of impulse to witness ourselves, our lives, and other aspects of ourselves, versus just stepping back and witnessing some film or TV or whatever it is. I mean, that is really great, but I'm just saying that if that's a substitute for that, it's not, it doesn't quite fulfill that need. So it's almost like, somebody who eats, many, many big pile of chips because it doesn't have the nutrients that their body wants. So it's important to look at subtle and gross to say, what are the things that you're doing? What's the need that's fulfilled by them? And then what's a more subtle way to do it? So in terms of, this is useful especially in changing behavior. So say, for example, if there's some behavior you wanted to change. What you can do, if people that are just all about willpower, that's like, I'm going to stop smoking. That's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to notice the grinding sound and just do it, and just force myself into it. And there's many people who change that way, and that's fine. Not to take anything away from willpower, there are people who are able to do that. But there's also something called secondary gain. Secondary gain is basically the positive effect you're having from the negative behavior. So say, for example, if it was someone wanted to stop smoking, for example, that you would say, what are the actual authentic positive things that are happening from this behavior? Maybe they never really take time for themselves, maybe they never really show self-care or any kind of thing like this, and as crazy as it is, maybe them working in an office building and they have to go outside, take a cigarette break, stand outside, look up at the sky, look at trees and birds. They're smoking, but maybe that is a positive thing that they experience in their day. Having some excuse to go out and take a break and look at trees and birds and whatever it is. I mean, they're smoking, but that one thing is a positive aspect of sort of like a negative pattern, if you consider it a negative pattern. Maybe breathing deeper, or as I mentioned before, in this example, that when you sort of purse your lips, there's the breathing, there's like a pranayama thing of like when you narrow the sort of aperture of your mouth and you breathe in a certain way, there's a certain effect from that. So maybe smoking through a cigarette is sort of like a lower analog of that thing. So whenever you're focusing on changing a behavior, always ask what's it really giving me? Like, what is this behavior giving me? How is this helping me feel? And really kind of look at it. It's like, what are all the things that drive it? What are the things that happen in my environment? And I say, oh, now it's time to do this. If you lay all of that out, and then look at at a deep level, what's happening. So if someone's smoking, yes, they're getting the nicotine, they're feeling this negative polarity of this addiction or this need, and then it pulls in, they have the cigarette and they relax, it draws it in. But on a deep level, what is that satisfying? So if you can look at it to say, okay, here's what I'm doing, here's all the secondary gains, so what's something that I can do that's more subtle, a more subtle replacement for that thing that's a little bit more gross, for example. And you can find another way to take a break, another excuse to go out and look at birds or whatever it is that and if you look at secondary gain in changing behavior, you're satisfying the authentic desires that you have, and you're a little bit more likely and more able to change that behavior. Okay, the next one is, I just call it seated reading. So say, for example, if you have a specific challenge or project you're working on, you can read the Emerald Tablet. You can meditate on this challenge or project, whatever it is that's active in your awareness. You can really think about it, meditate on that situation, all the aspects, and then let all that go, but still kind of feel your connection to it. And then pick up the Emerald Tablet and read it, and see if there's any parts that come out to you, that really jump out. And especially, as I mentioned before, the big things are attraction and aversion. If there's some part that you absolutely love, or there's some part that really irritates you, there's something there. So those are really good to do. Also too, even if you don't have a challenge, it's really good to read it and allow it to things to pop out like that. Okay, so the next one I'd like to share is the 7 stages journal process. So years ago, I think it was like 2009 or something like that. I just found the Kybalion and I was reading it, and it felt like sort of like the Emerald Tablet. There was layers to it, and I'd read something, and then I'd go back and read something again. I was like, oh wait, I didn't even see that part in it. And there's all this stuff that would come out that I wasn't aware of. And I had a thought. I was like, what if I just every Monday or every Sunday I would start with like the first principle, like the mentalism, and every day I would focus on one, and I'd write about it. I'd like journal about it, and I'd try to come up with something new, but I would have that in my mind throughout the day, and I'd see what happened during the day that reflected that principle. And what I do is I go through the 7 days, and then for the next week I start again with the mentalism, and I'd start the mentalism and cause and effect and the vibration, rhythm, and I go through all of those principles, one per day. And what I noticed is that instead of like a circle, it was like a spiral. Every single time I'd start here, by the time the week would roll around, here I'd have a different understanding of that principle because I would have lived the whole week reflecting on it. So what I did was, when I was thinking about this is one of the first processes that came out for me. And I thought, well, why don't I do this with the 7 alchemical phases? And so I did that after my last talk. So I've been doing a journal, and each day I'd focus on a principle, and I would come up with different questions. And sort of like, when I started, it was kind of clunky, like I had 2 questions, and then the more I did it, the more stuff came out. So you might want to say something, for example, like, what are the examples of it? So say calcination might be fire, but it also might be frustration. What are all the examples? You could consider them higher or lower or more subtle or more gross. How do you know that principle? Where do you see that principle reflected? And then after that, you might want to say, how have you experienced that in the past? Like, how has that principle shown up in your life? How have you lived that principle? What's your relationship with that principle? Is that the principle that frustrates you, that you don't easily flow through? And then, what's your history with it? And then how can you use it in the future? Like, how would you like to have a conscious relationship with dissolution or separation or conjunction or any of these things? So you're looking at your old patterns, how you know it, examples of it in your life, how you've done it in the past, and then how you do it in the future. And like with any journaling process, if you find another question that really resonates with you, that's strongly like, oh, that's so great, then that's another question. And that way you can add that to your process and each week go through it. And I would say it's really good to do it for at least 21 days, at least 3 weeks. If you do that, they say that it takes 21 days to make a habit. If you do that for 3 weeks, then you'll have a really vivid sense. Each one of these things you will experience and meditated on for 3 full days, and you'll have a much deeper understanding of them. So one of the things that I just wanted to share in my process of doing it was I never really thought about the idea of like the lower forms or lower analogs of stuff. Because I think about this with food, and say for example that a lot of times we crave sugary snacks, but I think that a lot of the reason for that is that a lot of our produce is old, it's picked too young, and it sits on trucks and it ages in transport. So it ripens in transport, but it's not getting all of those nutrients the whole time as what was originally intended when you pick fruit when it's ripe and then you just eat it. So I feel like that sugary foods and sodas and stuff like that are a lower analog of plant ripened fruit. So and I'm not saying that these are correct or that these are like the perfect examples of these lower analogs. I'm just saying that they're what I found as I was reflecting on my history with each of these principles, how they've happened in my life, how I've seen them reflected in other people. I would say, oh, this thing is a lot like calcination, but it's not really an authentic calcination that's moving things naturally to the next stage. So say, for example, in calcination, is I found, it's fire, it's friction, it's movement, but it also I found that if you have like rage or actual violence, that's sort of that lower analog of it. That's sort of a lower thing that's related to it or feels like it, but it's not really an authentic form of it. So that's just one of the things that came out for me. And dissolution. And one of the things that I found for myself in reflecting on this is one of the lower analogs is giving up on something. If there's something, and it's interesting because when I got to this, I started reflecting on my past. There's some people that I've known that they basically promise, I will never give up on anything, or anything that I'm doing, I will absolutely go, and never ever give up on. And that's an admirable trait in general. But if you always keep doing new things and add new things and never stop anything, you will literally be like a runaway snowball, running down a hill, getting bigger and bigger. So when I got to dissolution, I was meditating on it a little bit. I said, well, what's a way that people can shift away from what's not working, and then refocus on what is working, versus just like giving up on something. And the lower analog I found is if you give up on something that's in alignment. There's a feeling of like dissolution, of like letting go. It's like you're letting go of the energy, you're letting go of the disappointment or the frustration. If you had a lot of frustration from stage 1 to calcination, just pushing and trying to get things going, if you have a lot of residual frustration, then into stage 2 dissolution, to get to the next phase in a clean state of separation, it's really important to let go of the old energy, let go of the old baggage. So there's the authentic gesture of letting go. So it could be you're letting go to insistence on exactly how something manifests. It could be letting go of, really just anything emotional. So it's not about giving up the thing, it's about allowing yourself to let go of that old energy or that old entanglement, or even an old point of view. You can sort of let go of that old point of view and then come back and see it from another fresh approach or perspective. And if you do that, if you let go of just the energy of it, then you can consciously choose in the next phase, in separation, you can take inventory to say, well, I choose this, but I don't choose this. It's not the same thing as I'm giving up because this is too hard. So if you've ever had the experience of trying, and you try something, and then you just have to let go because it's just, you can't do it, a better way of doing that is to keep these alchemical stages in mind and let go of your frustration, the attachment to insistence and a specific looking outcome, whatever it is, let all of that go. And then in separation, you stand back and you see all of it. And then in conjugation, you put the most valuable aspects together. So you're literally letting go of some things and doing other things, but it's not the way that traditionally people might give up because, oh, it's too hard. So that was one of the realizations I had through working through this process. Okay, so separation is one of the lower analogs, and this is like what I mentioned before, is like separating things out so you're kind of getting the best of the best that's going to serve what's happening for you and putting it together. So basically, a lower analog of this could be a false division, disintegration, isolation, that sort of being sealed off, just that you feel like you have to keep yourself separate. Because with this process, it's really about that each phase of the process has a real significant function, but it's sort of like you have to flow through the process and not really get stuck on any one point. So it's really good to separate yourself out, like do a silent retreat or do some type of thing where you separate yourself from life and then you re-engage in it. But it's more when you get stuck in it, if you're isolated or separated for a long period of time. So I kind of say that as sort of the lower analogs of that, of separation. Okay, so conjugation is after you've had whatever frustration or whatever, you let go of the energy of it, dissolution, then you separate it out, you say, okay, this, and you're kind of picking your ingredients, and then in conjugation, you're putting them together. One of the lower analogs of that is if people can't stand up on their own, or there's sort of that codependence or whatever it is, that sort of being a collective, but not having that individual separateness as well. Okay, so fermentation is, as we mentioned, when you have sort of the early success, you put things together in conjunction, sort of the best, and then it all kind of ripens, and it's related to gold and the metal that's associated with it. And then what happens is there's this new phase that starts. It's like the creation of the lesser stone to the creation of the greater stone. And when you do this, it basically is new life is coming into it, even though it might look like a setback, like something's spoiled or something is corrupted in some way. Really what's happening is something that's a positive thing is happening because the new life is coming into it. So the lower analogs could be parasites, corruption of some form or another. But even in this, it's really important to know that when those things happen, every new place you get to is another platform to create from. So things can be a setback in a sense, but really life is just inviting you to bring something new to the process to make the next transformation. Okay, distillation. So there's fermentation, and then there's this new process that starts. Things move up to this new level, and then distillation is the evaporation of essence. You're taking the essence of all of that transformation that comes up, and one of the things about it is that you can have impatience. You can be sort of like flighty, a little jumping around, that kind of thing, that sort of mercurial type of thing of not going into depth. Sort of someone who dabbles but never masters things. There's that sort of like the lower analog of that, the like high but sort of flighty. Okay, and coagulation, basically, it's when you have that distillation, you get this essence that it has to come and gather back again. So one of the things that I found with coagulation is one of the lower analogs that I can see is if someone has dogmatic or they're really rigid perfectionists. They're saying, this is the truth, this is how things are, this is the way. They've gone through all these stages, and maybe they've had some success, they have some things, but they lose that sort of the Rosicrucian thing of being a walking question mark. Dogma is like, your question mark's dead, it's out the window. You say, I'm right, this is the way. You find principles, and you align yourself with those principles, and then you close the door. You don't allow new lights, new understanding, new questions to come in. You're basically saying, this is how it is. So that's how it can show up in terms of a rigidity, about being really dogmatic, rigid, and just moving through all these spaces, and then saying, I've achieved this state, or I've achieved this process, and then sort of getting into the ego place of it. Okay, so the next process is repeated reading and journaling. So just how you can read through, and I just shared with my experience, is going through the 7 things of each day, looking at it to say, with new eyes, to say, calcination, what does that look like? Oh, it could be the sun, it could be fire, it could be this thing, it could be that, any of these, or it could be lead, I mean, it's related to the Saturn. So there's all these ways you can look at it. You look at all of these different aspects of it, and every time you cycle around to it, you're seeing it from a different place, because it's the whole thing of we're seeing the world not as it is, but as we are. So as we change, what we see changes. So the whole process of doing these cyclic journaling exercises is we're allowing the information to come to us in a different way because we've changed. We're 1 week older, or we've had 1 week more experience. So this process about repeated reading of the Emerald Tablet is basically journaling in the same way we just did with the 7 alchemical stages. You can read through the Emerald Tablet in this same way. And even just this morning, I looked, and I'll just share a couple examples of this. So, its father is the sun, its mother is the moon. The wind carries it in its belly, its nurse is the earth. It is the origin of all, the consecration of the universe. Its inherent strength is perfected if it's turned to earth. And this morning I just looked at this, I just glanced at it, and I thought, what does it mean that its inherent perfection, its inherent strength is perfected if it's turned to earth? Like, what does that mean? And this morning I just looked at that and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Does that mean that the strength of a process is only perfected when you manifest something with it, or when you apply it to actual things in your life that you are actually, it's not just a thought, it's not a concept, it's something you're actually changing and doing. Maybe. But the most important thing is to always be curious, always be open, and see how things show up differently. So that's really the most important thing I would say, and it's such a natural thing to do a 7-stage process, one thing each day. With the Emerald Tablet, I would just say, what if you did it for a week? And every day you read through it and you write your notes. Any new pieces that jump out. Any piece that jumps out, it's sort of a launching pad for new questions or new observations. So that's one of the things. I don't really have a structured format for this one thing. It's basically just going back through that same familiar material, being completely open and allowing it to come together in whatever way makes most sense to you. Okay, and then the last phase I wanted to share was actually a 7 stages meditation. It's basically when you think of some project or something or circumstance, and you actually move through all 7 stages in sort of a narrative. So let's do this. We have a little bit of time. So let's do this. If everyone can close their eyes, and we're going to do this one meditation process together. Okay, so come to a nice upright seated position that's relaxed. Take a nice deep breath in. Allow it out. And just feel your body relax. Take another nice deep breath in. Allow it out. Allow your body to relax even more deeply. And now take a third inhale. And on the exhale, let go of anything that's not right here, right now. Just allow yourself to rest in your chair in this moment, letting go of anything that's not right here, right now. Okay, so in your awareness, bring to mind a project, a process, something that you're working to create. Or it could be bring to mind something you're in the process of creating now, something you would like to create. And just allow yourself to be light and sort of playful with this, and just to let your imagination sort of flow. Okay, when you think of this amazing thing, you have this sort of subtle idea that you would like to bring into solid manifestation, or something that you've done in the past like this. And feel that excitement. And then allow yourself to feel that starting it moving, getting it going, sometimes there can be some resistance. There can be some frustration. There can be some inertia. It's almost like you're rolling a big heavy stone. There's some inertia. And you can feel, as you start things moving, some extra effort is needed, some extra energy. And you may feel sort of the heat, or that sort of burning of having to run a lot of energy, needing to do a lot of things. You might feel calcination. You might feel the heat of all that generated by all that activity. You may feel heat with setbacks, with frustrations. But however you experience it, allow it to reflect back to you. Like, is there anything about your ego, any presuppositions about your ego, that you can do it alone, or you can do it best, or whatever it is? Because that, a lot of times, can come up in the first phase. And that calcination, that frustration, is that maybe you can't do it in the way you thought you could. Or maybe you might get into self-judgment to say, I thought this would be easier. And that would, reflect back to ego. But just allow yourself to feel that moving against that inertia, starting things moving. and feel the heat of that is sort of burning away what's not necessary. And then if you felt that exertion, maybe experience some frustration, just allow yourself the experience of just shifting into a place of rest. And you're just allowing yourself to let go for the moment of that activity and focusing on your energy. Focusing on letting all of that old frustration, all of that old energy go. Let all of the pushing go. Not letting go of the project, but you're letting go of that momentary energy that accumulated of that pushing or that getting things going in calcination. And then you can feel within yourself this sort of watery sort of dissolution where this old frustration or these old obstacles are sort of dissolving and they're just sort of flowing away. Just allow that process to feel like it's cleaning, like how the air feels after a rain or how you feel after a shower. Allow yourself to feel like it's like cleaning the slate. You still have your project or you still have the thing you're working with, but you're allowing it to just get cleaned and you're getting a rinse of it. Allow yourself to feel the coolness of this solution where you felt the fire just before calcination. And with that coolness comes clarity. And now with that clarity, move into the third phase of separation. And you can clearly be in that electrically, sort of energetically neutral place. You can really see and feel things so clearly. And you can look to say, oh, I was pushing so hard before, but I was pushing this unnecessary thing. I can put it together in this new way. And you can be selective. You can pull out this element or that element. And you might say, well, if I do this, and this other thing together, that would be so much easier. That would be so much better. And as you sort of pick these elements and separate them out from the elements that were not helpful, that were just causing extra work, then you put them together in phase 4 in conjunction. And you have a sense of this chemistry, this synergy of these elements coming together. And you realize that there's a certain energy and a certain momentum that's happening that was missing in the first phase. Because there's lots of unnecessary things that needed to burn off and be purged in that first phase. And now working with conjunction, you are taking the best of the best and you're putting it together. And you're seeing it immediately start to have some momentum that was missing in stage 1. Feeling this chemistry, feeling these things come together. And the excitement of this can generate this early success, just like the metal gold that's associated with stage 4 and the creation of the lesser stone. Feeling this excitement, feeling this creation, feeling this satisfaction that yes, it's completed, it's done. I've accomplished this thing. And then allow yourself to feel sort of that other aspect come in. That wait, there's something else. There's something murky. There's something else kind of within this. And then sense that things are shifting. They're getting a little strange. And if you have a sense of things sort of getting corrupted or confused, you're having some sense of things getting spoiled or getting disrupted, you may feel that energy of sort of the dark night of the soul. Sort of what do you do when things fall apart? Or when you're doing something and it was so good before, and then it sort of feels like it's spoiled. Or it feels like that it's all lost. And again, you might feel sort of depression or type of loss that this early success that you've just had at stage 4 is changing things. But really what's happening is some new aspect of it is coming in, some new life. It's a very positive thing. It's fermentation. New influence, new life, new obstacles, new elements are coming in to further the transformation. And transformation doesn't always feel great. It can feel challenging. But allow this. Allow yourself to become what life is inviting you to be. Be the person who didn't just enjoy the early success in stage 4. Be the person who's going to complete to stage 7 and move through this darkness, this sort of dark night of the soul. And at the same time, use it as a cleanse. Use it as an opportunity to see these deep unconscious things that come up. Maybe when you doubt yourself, maybe when others doubt you. These things never really see the light of day when things are bouncing along. And allow yourself to learn and experience these depths. And feel that even this process that initially might have seemed like such a setback or such a hardship or difficulty is actually moving the process to the next level. And the discomfort of it might feel like it's a setback, but it's actually a huge leap forward. And now allow yourself to feel that there's a positive aspect to these elements coming together. Feel this chemistry and this fermentation moving. And then sense that there's an essence forming. And feel that you're being aware of the principle behind it. What's the deep truth or the deep principle coming up from the depths? And allow this to evaporate off. You're sensing and experiencing this evaporation, this distillation. Moving up in stage 6. You're taking this situation that was difficult, and you're taking the lesson, you're taking the essence of it, and it's drawing up from the top of it. And as it moves up, you're feeling this very rarefied essence, which is so different than any piece that's come before. Than the fire, the water, the separation, the putting together, and the fermentation. This essence is such a specific, rarefied, very subtle essence that's coming from it. What are the lessons you've learned? Who are you becoming as a person through this process? Look at these principles, look at these essences. It's evaporating up and flowing up from this whole transformative process. And now, allow these insights and these experiences that evaporated up in stage 6 to start gathering in stage 7. Stage 7 is coagulation. It is the gathering together of the essence that happened in stage 6. Those principles, the deep lessons, essences, the truths, the deeper truths that we might not have ever known before, that are coming together from stage 6, all gather in stage 7. And now it is a complete living thing that you can use. It's a part of you. Or if it's a project, it's part of your business or part of whatever project that you're doing. It's been completed, it's been gathered. And now, sitting there, holding and experiencing this collected essence, this sort of rarefied essence. You're feeling it. And you're knowing that this can help guide you in the future. This can help be sort of the philosopher's stone. It can be the thing that's a catalyst that helps you change other things. And at the same time, this isn't just a straight line, it's a spiral. And know that that collective essence that's happened in stage 7 is something you can bring with you for your next creation. And stage 7 can then connect to stage 1, where you start another phase of creation or start another completely new project. But you use this distilled essence, this distilled wisdom, these lessons, all the gathered experience you had that got distilled off and gathered. It's really best when you take that and then you actively apply it to something else and you use it. Okay. And whenever you're ready, take a nice deep breath in. Allow it out. Take a second deep breath in. Allow it out. And a third deep breath in. Allow it out. And then open your eyes. You can look around the room. It's one of the best ways to kind of get out of a meditative state. It's like just trace your eyes around objects. All right, so those are just 9 things. There's nothing really deep or mystical or hidden. They're just through working with this book, working with the, like I said, I mean, I worked with the Emerald Tablet. Dennis Hawk gave me these 7 phases from it. But the rest of it was just me just doing this process of just journaling, of like reading something, being receptive, writing down insights to happen. Thinking, oh, wouldn't it be interesting to go through the 7 phases each day of the week and repeat it each week? And when you do that, all these insights come. So I would just say that this is going to be my last talk for now on the Emerald Tablet. And next month what we're going to do is we're going to work with alchemy applied to psychology and sort of the psychology of alchemical change. But I wanted to wrap up the 3rd talk on sort of thrice great Hermes work with here's 9 roads that you can continue to explore on your own. Because ultimately it's not about what I say or what anyone else says about it. It's about how you can find your own way to experience it. How you can find your own truth in it. And how through seeing it in a specific way, you can always see it in a new way. And when you see it in that new way, new light and new potential will come from it. So, awesome. Well, thank you so much.